What's going on, guys? Big Out 227 here, and today we're going to have a little bit of a different video. I'll be interviewing another content creator. His name is Waydot, and he covers MMO games and content along those lines. So I hope you guys enjoy the style of content. I hope you guys enjoy the video. We talk about just basically being a creator. He's a bigger creator, so I just wanted to interview him and get his insights on what it was like to go through the grind basically, and just to help out other creators. So if you guys like the video, please like, subscribe, share it around, and let me know your thoughts below. All right, so have Waydot here, obviously. So just gonna ask you a few questions, well, several questions, I'm gonna say, and then just go from there. Tell me about, your YouTube story, and that's really it. All right, you down for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good.
All right, let's get it going. So what made you start YouTube?
So I've been obviously watching and even putting videos on YouTube since I was about 14 years old. Back in the day, I was making like Call of Duty MW2 like montages.
Yeah.
We had a little clan, we had like 400 subs on YouTube, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. But then, life hits you and you grow up, and I didn't have a computer really for a long time, or a way to access YouTube or put content out there. And as soon as I was able to actually afford a decent computer, it was basically the first thing I did was started making content for YouTube. It's kind of just how I creatively express myself, is through videos. So,
Got it.
But I was working at the casino at the time, a casino here, and I don't know. It's not the most inspiring job on earth. I was working as a dealer in the casino, and you see a lot of sort of depravity, degeneracy in that place. And as soon as I had my PC, I was like, I am going to try YouTube and hopefully make this work in some way, shape, or form. So
yeah, and now it's working out. I'm assuming. Seems like you're doing pretty well.
It's working out now. Yeah.
Nice.
It's doing a lot better these days, especially. So
Got it. Yeah. So do you do YouTube full time?
I do. Yep.
Nice. So at what point did you know that you can go full time?
Way before you're ever supposed to. Actually,
Yeah.
there's some people who would probably argue that I shouldn't even be full-time now, just because YouTube is so volatile, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you can have a really good month, you can have a really bad month. Luckily, I create a lot of what I consider to be more evergreen content, so it tends to get views over a longer period of time, so it's a little bit more secure, but you really have no idea. One day your channel might get demonetized. There's so many factors at play. So going full-time with YouTube is never an easy decision. But I definitely made it too soon. I've been full-time on YouTube for about a year and a half, I believe.
Got it.
And yeah, when I first went full-time, I probably wasn't making enough, but I kind of had to take that leap of faith because, I think when you add a bit of risk into a situation, it can often motivate you or propel you forward. So I used it in that sort of sense, but probably not the smartest decision looking back on it.
But yeah, now you're doing it now. So I mean, again, you did it. I think that's the big component to it.
Yeah, I made it work.
Yeah, exactly. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to smaller creators in similar or adjacent niches to get started or to continue the momentum?
So that's a question that I used to have an answer for, but because YouTube and the algorithm is constantly changing, maybe what I would have said a year ago wouldn't actually fit anymore. So I obviously, well, not obviously, but I found my start on YouTube in RuneScape, which is another MMO, obviously. And a lot of people actually find their start in RuneScape. It's a very easy game to kind of record and make videos for. You don't necessarily need to show your face. You don't really have to have too much personality. The game just kind of writes content while you play it. And because of that, so many people find their start in RuneScape. And it's a really good way to kind of learn the skills, whether it comes to video editing or just kind of creating a storyline for a video. So it gives you a lot of good basics to go forward with. So I used to actually tell people, find a game like that. Find a game like RuneScape, where the barrier to entry is pretty low and you can start making those videos right away, because really you want to make, 50 videos. And then every single time you make a video, you want the next video to be slightly better. You want to find something you did wrong and make it slightly better. And that advice still stands. But these days, I would say what you need to do is really pay attention to what other people in the niche are doing. And you need to have a sort of pattern recognition. So find a niche that you want to delve into, whether that be MMOs or some other form of gaming. Take a list and look at the top 10 creators in that niche, look at their most popular videos, and try and essentially recreate them, but add your own twist to them. Because YouTube, it's not about reinventing the wheel and being super, super creative over and over. It's about doing what works. It's an algorithmic, sort of business. So,
Yeah. No, and that totally makes sense, especially with really how it's going, like in our realm of things with like React
mhm,
content and everything.
mhm.
Like again, all you need is like one Asmongold React, and it's kind of like you're there. So it sets you up in such a
I
way.
mean, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, and I think that's like you mentioned a lot of things. Like I'm in a smaller niche of like turn-based like tactics games and things
Mhm.
along those lines, and there aren't too many people that cover it. Like I definitely like made a list and like checked other like creators, and it's kind of
Pretty small.
smaller, and
Yep.
and one of the top creators, he has a website that I literally write for. So it's one of those
Mhm.
things where it's like, okay, well, this niche isn't really that booming, so that's why
Yeah.
I'm kind of trying to dive into it in that
I
way.
think first of all, I watched your Heroes of Dire video, and for anybody listening who doesn't know, Heroes of Dire is a game that I found in one of my series where I explore games that have zero to very few players. But I watched your Heroes of Dire video. I thought it was really good. You even went a little bit more in depth than I did, but I'm surprised at your channel. Take this in a good way. I'm surprised at your lack of views. You have good thumbnails, you have good titles, and your commentary and your voice is excellent. It's not some crappy mic or stuttering or anything like that. So I think you actually have a chance to have a really good channel later on. It's just breaking that initial phase of YouTube where you're getting very little views is one of the most challenging things to do. And honestly, it takes a bit of luck. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate everything you just said because again, it's like it took me a little bit to find, and again, like you said, it took me, I would say like 3 or 4 videos to
Mhm.
really get down to the commentary side of things and just start giving my opinion on how it is, like rather than just
Yeah.
like playing through it and doing it, just
Yep.
doing that extra commentary and like taking like deep dives into it, but also like respecting the viewer's time. So that's why a lot of my
Mhm.
videos are like 5 minutes, and then like here's a dire one, like I want to like still take like deep dives into like games like that, give more time, but a lot of like the indie things I cover, no more than five
Yep.
minutes. Like I just want to give enough like deep information and then just be able to have them like have it digestible in that way.
That's a good call, in some ways.
Yeah.
In other ways, YouTube really, really rewards watch time. And so
Hmm.
before this call started, we were kind of talking about how I just put out that Throne and Liberty video. The
Yeah.
video's an hour long.
Yeah.
I have another video on my channel that is 12 hours long, which is a giant compilation of all of my RuneScape 3 adventures. And am I rambling a bit in that video? Am I always respecting the viewer's time? I'd like to say I am, but probably not. But so many people, so many viewers, they kind of appreciate that longer format sometimes. They like putting on a video and sometimes even like zoning in and out of it and just kind of watching it in the background. So don't be afraid to make your content longer, is what I would say.
Got it. Yeah, that's literally what I do a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Like when it comes to like longer content, like hour long or like deep dives, that's really what I do too. Like just
Yeah.
have it on in the background. Um, but yeah, that's honestly, I think my next few things I'll definitely try to break it up and do some like longer form and just see how that checks out.
Yeah, give it a try. YouTube is about experimenting, right? Like try
Yeah.
something new, try 100 new things, find out what did best, and then do that over and over.
Yeah, one will stick.
Yeah.
So did you do YouTube alone or were you in like a community? Did you share your videos? What was the way of going about it when you started?
So I mean, I did YouTube alone, yes. But initially, when we started the RuneScape 3 content, which is where I really found my first kind of growth on YouTube, we obviously started like a clan in game, and then we had a Discord server, which grew to like 1,600 members at some point, and then I was streaming on Twitch at the same time. So I really grew a community around my RuneScape 3 content. So that definitely helped. But in terms of like other people that did YouTube, not really. Later on, I was lucky enough to be invited to different game headquarters where I could like meet with other creators, and I've made friends and stuff. But in terms of like working with them, not really. It's mostly just been me, myself, and I.
Got it. Got it. And do you think that's like an important part of it too? Just being solo focused, not, sharing things around, just really, I guess, like being in the trenches of it and not having any like outside influence that could like impact the algorithm, you can say, or just like the content itself?
Well, so if you want to talk about like just sharing or getting different ideas about how to make YouTube work from other YouTube creators, that's almost always beneficial, I think. Like
Yeah.
I am in the YouTube partner Discord, and I don't talk in there much, but I like to see what a lot of the other creators are talking about, and I sometimes I get ideas from that, or think, oh, maybe I should edit this way or change something. So that's fine. But in terms of like what I think you might be getting at is more collaboration. I think
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
collaboration is it's tricky on YouTube because if you collaborate with, let's say, a much larger creator, what often ends up happening, you mentioned Asmongold earlier, a lot of his fans will watch maybe your video and maybe the next one. But unless you really, really resonate with that fan base, it's generally going to give you a ton of empty subscribers or a ton of people who are getting recommended your content, but then they won't actually click on it, which actually makes the video perform worse in the long run.
Yeah.
So collaboration, when it's not done properly, it can be dangerous. But I think two creators that have a very similar mutual goal and provide equal sort of benefit to whatever the collaborative project is, where the viewer could basically go and watch either person's content and be equally satisfied. I think that's the best way, but it's rare. That's a rare scenario. So collaboration can be a little difficult.
Got it. That makes sense. All right. So how long did it take you to reach where you're at right now? And what I mean by that is to becoming a partner, like fully monetized full time. What was each milestone, I would say?
Sure. So I made about 10 old school RuneScape videos that nobody will ever see. They're still on my channel, but they're privated because those were my first 10 videos on YouTube. I didn't really have my voice. I wasn't very confident. I like to have them there because I get to look back on them and see where I came from. And who knows, maybe one day I'll release one for fun or something. But they're pretty embarrassing. So that while I was doing that, I think I maybe got like 20 subs or something like that. But when I started the RuneScape 3 video, my very first time trying RuneScape 3 as more of an old school player, that video, I think in the first day, it got 3,000 views. And that like blew my mind. I was like, what's going on? And then the next day, I woke up and it had 15,000 views. And then I was really blown away. And I think by the end of that week, right before I put out episode 2, I had all of the requirements for monetization. And for people who don't know, I believe that's 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subs, where it was at the time.
It still is,
yeah. So by the end of that week, I actually had the requirements to become monetized, which was pretty cool. It was a little unfortunate, though, because the monetization process actually takes a while. So on all of those kind of views at the initial part of my series, which generally you get the most views on a series in the beginning, all of those views actually were never monetized. So I didn't get paid for those, but it's okay.
Nice. I mean, that makes sense that like the way that just happens like overnight is, I think, is like one of the interesting things about YouTube, how quickly things can change and just how anything can happen. Like, who even knows?
Oh, I mean, I have videos that, they'll be on my channel. They'll get like 40,000 views, let's say, after a couple of months. And then randomly, I wake up and it got 20,000 views in the last 24 hours. And so, what?
Yeah.
You cannot explain the algorithm. It's a very complex machine that works behind YouTube. But it's beneficial. There's no other platform where you can really get discovered as easily as you can on YouTube. So maybe TikTok, but we don't like TikTok.
Exactly. Yeah. Agreed. So I get this another general just video question. How do you manage when a video doesn't perform well?
Horribly, mental failure, breakdown. No. Especially in the early days, I think when you first find success on YouTube or on any social media platform, you have this fear of falling off, right?
Yeah.
And I found in my early days that was a very pervasive sort of feeling. What if the next video doesn't do good? What if the next one doesn't do good? At this point, though, I've had so many videos fail that I just immediately, my first thought is, okay, what am I going to do next? So these days, it doesn't really bother me so much. Obviously, it still sucks. You want every video to do well, but when they don't reach your standard, I think the best thing you can do is get back to work. There's no point sitting around worrying about it, changing the thumbnail, changing the title, stressing over it. Those can be beneficial. You should definitely look into it if your stats are, not looking so great. But I think the best thing you can do is make the next video.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that lately, and you see this a lot on like a lot of the smaller communities, basically like really focusing in on like, kind of like clickbaity title, clickbaity like thumbnail, try to focus in on that. Like, but at the end of the day, it really does come back down to like your content, like just make good content. And I see it so often that a lot of the content isn't that great, like, especially like in like the gaming communities and stuff like that. Just when I see it, it's not, you could have a good thumbnail, pay for a great thumbnail, but if your content, your mic, your audio isn't good, it really, what's the point, Yep.
I completely agree. I think, and kind of like how I was saying earlier, my advice changes. I think when I started YouTube, there could be an argument made for a video that sounds bad, looks bad, doesn't have a storyline. It just kind of is a bad video. It could have done well with the right title and thumbnail. I don't know if that's the case anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
Because I see videos with horrible, almost no thumbnail, basically just a screen from the video, random title, and then I click on it and the video's fantastic. And so YouTube seems to be able to understand, or at least the algorithm seems to be able to understand when content is compelling and keeps people around. So obviously the title and the thumbnail are important. They're going to help. But I don't think it's as important or as crucial to, clickbait or do things like that as it might have been, years prior. So.
No, exactly. And I think that's really important. And a lot of smaller creators should take that into account, that it really comes down to quality. Like everything comes back to quality, not just how much you produce and, low effort content. It's definitely not the way. And I think that's something I'm seeing more and more.
I think even more important than just raw quality, because let's say you have a very uninspiring video. It's kind of just a boring topic, but you have the best production quality in the world. It's like the most amazing video on taxes. Now, there probably are actually great videos on taxes on YouTube, but it'd be a more boring subject matter for most people. What I'm getting at is I think actually the number one most important thing is idea. You need an idea, and then through that idea, you need to put the quality into it. If you have an idea that makes your video stand out, that makes it entertaining, that's where you're going to find the most success, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, that makes sense because it brings forth like more eyes. And I think it aligns with the algorithm a lot more than a lot of these other things that we're seeing, or even like YouTube coaches or anything like that. It doesn't, those things like don't align in the way, because again, their whole monetization aspect is just telling you what you want to hear. But it makes sense that you have to just come up with something. Like make it interesting. And again, you still have to enjoy it though. And I think like a lot of people fear that, how they just like want to get into the grind, but like they sacrifice themselves for it, which, I mean, what's the point at that rate?
You mentioned the sort of YouTube gurus or advice salesmen out there, and a lot of them will tell you need to go research, the most lucrative niche. I completely disagree. If you're going to make videos in a niche that requires you to research it, you're going to be burnt out in the first 2 months. Like the only reason I can still make videos about MMOs is because I genuinely, if I wasn't making YouTube videos, I'd be playing MMOs. It's what I do, right? And I spend my free time watching other videos on MMOs. But if you don't have that sort of drive or passion for whatever your subject matter is, I think you're going to have a really tough time breaking out in the first place, but then also staying motivated to keep at it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same thing with me. Like in my free time, I literally play these games. So I was like, might as well just cover them while I'm playing it and then just talk about it. Like I've done game reviews before, like written reviews. I've worked with different writing outlets and stuff like that. So it's like,
Yep.
I could just make these videos then, because I do this every day. So
Well, and dude, there's no reason that you can't become the number one go-to expert of that niche. And
exactly.
if you want to take a look, just for example, like obviously this is luck and it's random, but I don't know if you know about Gotham Chess. You ever heard of him?
I have.
So chess, when he started, was not that popular. I mean, it was on the rise, but it wasn't that popular. But he is an expert on chess, right? And he starts his YouTube channel, he's making content, and then the Queen's Gambit comes out, and the chess boom starts, and suddenly everybody's playing chess. It's got more active players than any MMO on the combined, every MMO combined. So, and he was able to take that and turn it into a multi-million subscriber YouTube channel. So, with the right idea, I think you can take any niche as long as you are passionate about it and you understand its nuances. You can take any niche and take it to much higher heights than originally expected. So.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. And I really hope like other smaller creators also do the same, is like, just don't like make like Call of Duty content, like do something with that. Or, I mean, again, there's video games, there's so much different things. There's like, again, my thing's just, again, turn-based tactics, like, or turn-based games in general. And again, taking deep dives into those games, I don't ever see it. Like that's like, and that was my motivation to start, was the lack of Final Fantasy Tactics content. That's why I made my channel. I was like, I don't really see anyone talking about Final Fantasy Tactics, and like I still play it. Like I like played modded versions of it. I know the game like the back of my hand. And I'm like, yeah, someone needs to like do this at least. And I think just one other channel covered it, and I'm like, all right, well, that's open.
That's a great way to find niches that are untapped, by the way. Like if you're genuinely looking for YouTube content that you want to watch and you can't find it, that's like a calling. Someone is telling you, go make that video.
Yeah.
Like if you can't find the video you're looking for, that's a pretty rare scenario on YouTube these days with the thousands and thousands of hours of content that gets uploaded every minute or whatever. So I mean, if you find a niche, go for it. Make that video, because you're probably not the only person searching for it.
Exactly. And that's kind of like what I think everyone should do, and like kind of what I fell into. Like, I don't see everyone covering these like indie turn-based games or like these tactics games, like just from indie developers. And now I talk to these developers like every other day. Like they're giving me updates, they're doing all these things. And I think just that little push just does tremendous amounts of effort. So like a good example, I would say, like if you do like FPSs, talk to like FPS, creators or like FPS developers. I think just getting down in the trenches and talking to those developers and just seeing how their minds work, and then just going from there and making content around that is also another great way.
Oh, dude, absolutely. Talking to developers about MMOs has completely changed some of my original opinions about them, right? Like before, when I started making these videos, I didn't necessarily know all of the trials and challenges that might go into balancing a piece of content, for example, or making a piece of content that resonates with every player and doesn't piss off this other group of players or make this one mad. And there's so much more that goes into it than might meet the eye. So, and even this, like you're doing an interview here with me, you should ask some of these developers to do an interview. I think that would be awesome content that a lot of people probably would never really get the chance to look at, especially in terms of like turn-based games. You know what I mean? They're just so much less popular, unfortunately.
Yeah. And they're definitely making a comeback too. Like, Metaphor ReFantasio has literally all 9s, 10s across the board. But again, no one knows like what that is, right? It's
I've
like
never heard of that until you just said it.
Yeah, so. it's by like the Persona developers. Like,
gotcha.
And it's like a completely like different IP and all these things. And it literally is like 10s across the board. Like, but again, no one's heard of it. So it's one of those things that it's such a low key niche that only like, again, like a lot of hardcore people watch or like are invested in, but it still is very broad and involves so many other people. Like everyone can get into it.
What makes you love those sort of turn-based strategy games? What's your favorite part about them?
So I grew up with JRPGs. I had an older brother. So I grew up with like the NES, all those things, playing Final Fantasy when I was younger. And I remember just being really young and playing Final Fantasy Tactics. And I invested so much time into it. And that ever since then, it was like, that's all like I just resonated with. Turn-based games, while everyone, I mean, turn-based games and like Halo were like my two big things. And then from the turn-based games like JRPGs, I started playing, my first MMO was Guild Wars. And then that's all I used to play at like 9 years old, 10 years old. I would just play Guild Wars, doing raids and everything, because it emulated that like turn-based feel almost for me. Like you can make your own party. Yeah. And I was like, this is like perfect for me. And so from there, I just, you know, branched out, started playing Final Fantasy 14, before and after, you know, the mess that it was. And then now I just do a mix of everything with turn-based games. But I love the idea of sitting back and like thinking about it, like strategizing, you know, unit placement, unit abilities. I love like the freedom of it rather than being, I guess, like tied into like a linear progression. Like I can overlevel my units. I can break the game basically. And it's, it just gives you a lot of freedom. And I think that's why I lean into it.
Yeah, it's interesting how the games you kind of play as a child seem to really be the ones that you have an itch for later in life. I've found that myself. Like one of my favorite games of all time is Final Fantasy X, which is turn-based combat. And I still probably every year or two go back and do a playthrough of that game. And it's interesting though, because like my first time playing that, I think I was 5 years old with my dad, and I had no idea what was going on. And I couldn't actually play the game because it's a very difficult game, even by today's standards. So,
it is.
But yeah, and then obviously MMOs. I played MMOs a ton when I was a kid, and now I still play them. And then I mentioned Call of Duty, so I still play a ton of Call of Duty, or at least first-person shooter games on the side. So
yeah, exactly. So it's like we just, you know, stem from all these different things. And I mean, I even used to play Ultima Online, like with family members, like literally grown family members, and I'm like, this is crazy. But again, that's like the fun of it, I think, and it allows everyone, like anyone, to break into these niches.
Yep, definitely, man.
So my final question for you is, what is your favorite MMO today?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. This answer changes constantly for me.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like, to be honest, I feel like I'm still looking for something and I can't find it. And that's what drives my channel. It's like I just want to find that MMO and I don't know if it exists. My favorite MMO when it's active is classic World of Warcraft. So whenever they do a fresh start or a new server, that is by far my favorite experience. But to be honest, I usually only play it for like a month.
Got it.
So I don't even get that invested, but that initial start and that leveling process, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
But in terms of long-term investment, it's got to be between Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online, because they focus on that horizontal progression. And I'm getting older and I've got a son and I have things I need to do. So any game that really respects your time and allows you to jump in and out whenever you want and play for a short period of time, but still make meaningful progress, that's kind of my favorite right now. But I would say the true answer is I'm still looking.
Got it. Which is so valid. I feel the same about Guild Wars 2. I go back and play it whenever there's like a new expansion or anything along those lines. It is so user friendly and is so friendly to everyone. I remember when it first came out, I have like 4 characters, like all max level, like because it's just so easy. Like they make it so easy for you just to get in, play around with it, you know, and I think it definitely deserves more love. I don't like see people talk about it as much.
I'll say, I think Guild Wars 2, the problem is a lot of players who come from other MMOs, they start Guild Wars 2 expecting it to be like other MMOs. And then when it's more horizontal and it's more like map completion, it can kind of feel a little bit like a single player RPG from like 2012. Like the base game kind of gives you that vibe in the first little bit of playing. But once you really break through that and you get into some of the expansions and you start running some of the, even just running around and doing like the world events and bosses and you start to really understand the gameplay loop a bit more once you're max level. And once you get into that, I think that's when the game really starts to become a lot of fun. I tried Guild Wars 2 for the first time literally last year. It's one of
nice.
The MMOs I still play. So
nice. I played it a while ago, and I think it was something Thorns was like the last expansion that I played through.
That's
And
Heart of Thorns.
yeah, Heart of
That's
Thorns.
The very first expansion that ever came out.
Was it the very first expansion? Damn.
Well, they've kind of mixed it up, so they'll do like DLC for a bit, and then
Yeah,
they do
that's what. Yeah,
expansions.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like the main expansion plus like there was another DLC that came with it. That was what I did, and it was incredible. Honestly, I was like, it was just so much fun. Even like playing like again, like the solo experience, I think is so important too. But it was just fun, and I think so many games miss that now, like the fun aspect. So
it's funny you say that because a lot of people consider Heart of Thorns to be the most boring and their least favorite expansion.
I liked it. I don't know.
I actually liked it too. There's
Yeah.
a meta event inside that expansion where you just get like all these people together and you have to take down this boss.
Yeah.
And then you head into the city and you loot all these chests and it's a ton of fun.
I liked it. Maybe I guess I was younger when I played. I don't know. I was like, this is dope. I was like, this is so cool. But
I mean,
again,
at the time, it was obviously a bit more highly regarded. I think it's people look back on the content and see what they have now.
yeah,
If you look
that
at
makes sense.
Path of Fire, that expansion for Guild Wars 2, it's my favorite, and it's generally people's favorite. And I think Path of Fire now, because that standard was raised with Path of Fire, they look back on Heart of Thorns with a little bit less
Got it.
favorability. So,
Yeah. That makes sense. I never played through Path of Fire. I did get the expansion. I never played through it.
Do it.
Definitely want to have to get through.
Dude, it's still so good. I highly recommend. Yeah.
No, I'll definitely play through it. I'll definitely, because I do go back and play Guild Wars like just every like, I definitely go back every year or so, and I even play like the original because I don't know, something about it, like the way it feels is just the nostalgia of it is crazy to me.
Dude, when I first got on the original, because I did the Guild Wars 1 video a few months back, but I played Guild Wars 1 back when I was like 10 years old with my dad, and pre-searing Ascalon is gotta be just one of the most nostalgic video game places I've ever stood in my life. It's amazing.
Easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I have today. Again, I just want to give you a huge thank you for, taking the time to talk to me about, content creation, YouTube itself, gaming. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm excited to see more from you, more on your channel. And if anyone's watching this, just so everyone knows, you can always reach out to me. I got to give you props. You're the only person who's ever reached out to me and asked if we could have a conversation. I'm a totally open book, and I love talking to people. So yeah,
and I appreciate that too. Like and I think just before we finish, I think that's something that a lot of people are like afraid to do. Remember, we're still people. Like what? I'm always down to talk for anything. Like obviously, if I find another turn-based MMO or something that comes up, I'll definitely send it your way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know. I appreciate that information. It's getting, more and more difficult these days to find games that nobody knows about. So,
oh, believe me, I'm on the search. I'm on the search.
Good.
All right. Well,
all right, cool, man. Well, thanks for the chat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.